Now, the US President Joe Biden will soon dispatch one of his most trusted and potentially influential officials to Europe.
According to reports, CIA Director Bill Burns will travel for a fourth round of multi-party talks in the hopes of brokering a broader deal to release the hostages still being held in Gaza.
Now, Burns is expected to meet in France with David Barnea, the head of Israel's Mossad intelligence agency, and Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani. Egyptian intelligence chief Abbas Kamel is also said to be involved in the talks. All four have engaged in previous rounds of negotiations aimed at freeing hostages in exchange for an end to hostilities, a principal demand made by the Hamas militants.
The CIA has declined to comment on Burns' travel schedule, which is said to be classified. This is not the first time Burns has travelled abroad as part of an effort to secure the release of the remaining hostages. In November, he visited Doha twice.
The CIA director is not the only US top official who is going to hold talks about the ongoing war in Gaza. America's national security advisor Jake Sullivan is also on his way to Thailand to meet China's foreign minister. Jake Sullivan is expected to raise recent Houthi attacks on ships in the Red Sea with Wang Yi. And ahead of Sullivan's meetup with China's Wang Yi, reports suggest that Chinese officials have asked their Iranian counterparts to help rein in attacks on ships in the Red Sea by the Iran-backed Houthis. If they are not able to do that, then Tehran may risk harming business relations with Beijing.
The latest possible talks follow as the International Court of Justice will also hand out its landmark ruling in the genocide case that has been brought against Israel. The interim ruling will indicate if the ICJ will order for emergency measures sought by South Africa to restrain the Israeli offensive in Gaza.
Now, there are also reports emerging that say that the US has created a channel with Israel to discuss concerns over incidents in Gaza in which civilians have been killed or injured by the Israeli military actions, and about the civilian facilities that have been targeted by the IDF. The channel was set up after a meeting earlier this month between US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Israel's war cabinet, during which Blinken expressed concerns about the constant reports of Israeli strikes that either hit humanitarian sites or resulted in large numbers of civilian deaths.
As we said, nice to see you.
Now for more on this, we're being joined by Charles Kupchan, who is a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations and was the former special assistant to the President and senior director for European Affairs on the staff of the National Security Council in the Barack Obama administration. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on World DNA.
Good to be with you.
Now, sir, CIA chief was involved in negotiating the previous hostage agreement back in November as well. The question, of course, is do you think they can reach a breakthrough this time around?
Well, we did see the last time there was a pause in the fighting and a hostage release that Bill Burns met with his counterparts from Israel, from Egypt, and then Prime Minister of Qatar. So it's a good sign that Biden has dispatched Burns. It suggests that the conversations have advanced to a point at which they feel that convening this high-level meeting is in order. The proposal that is on the table apparently suggests that there will be a 2-month pause in the fighting in return for Hamas's readiness to release in a staggered fashion all of the remaining hostages. If that deal is struck, I'm not optimistic that it would take effect readily, and that's because I think Israel is closing in around Khan Yunis in the southern part of Gaza, where the leadership of Hamas is. I'm guessing they're going to want to continue to prosecute that effort to go after the leadership before agreement on a pause in the fighting.
Mr. Kupchan, now, of course, the recently leaked audio recording of Netanyahu slamming Qatar's role in the negotiations, do you feel that's going to play some kind of a role, or rather, do you feel that would be a hindrance in achieving some kind of a breakthrough this time? Because Qatar has obviously not reacted to it well at all.
I don't think it is that big of a deal. These hot mic leaks occur from time to time. I think that Qatar had to react the way that they did, but I'm guessing that this will blow over and that given the urgency of the situation, the need to get the hostages released, there will be sincere conversations taking place in the coming days.
Sir, also let's talk about the ICJ ruling that is imminent as well. South Africa has requested for an interim ruling from the ICJ in its genocide case against Israel. Talk to us about the immediate impact that this may have if this ruling does come through. And will Israel be compelled to follow them?
Well, it's important to keep in mind that the ICJ is not ruling on the fundamental question of genocide. Many analysts believe that if it does rule, it will take several years for that case to move forward. I am expecting the ICJ to announce some kind of provisional measures. Otherwise, I think it would seem to be absent in the middle of a war in which there are high levels of civilian deaths. So my best guess is that we'll see the court call for greater efforts to limit the loss of civilian life, for more efforts to get humanitarian assistance, food, fuel, medicine into Gaza, more efforts to deconflict the Israeli military operation with the convoys with humanitarian assistance that are coming in. I'm guessing we'll see these kinds of calls from the ICJ, but nothing that would constitute a finding on the fundamental case itself.
Mr. Gupshin, I just wanted to, again ask you, do you feel Israel would be compelled to follow these even if that's the ruling that comes out?
Well, the ICJ does have legal standing, but it does not have the ability to enforce its provisions. And so in that sense, it would be up to Israel to voluntarily comply. I do think that we're already in a situation, in part because of American pressure, in which Israel has begun to move to a more surgical military operation, in which we're seeing more and more aid go in through Kerem Shalom, which is the crossing point in southern Israel from Israel proper into Gaza. So much of what the ICJ is likely to recommend is already beginning to take place. And in that respect, I don't think it would be difficult for Israel to comply. If the ICJ were to call for an immediate ceasefire, which I'm guessing it will not do, then that does put Israel in a position in which it may need to decline to follow the ICJ's admonition.
So it will be one more avenue of pressure on Israel at most, and of course then it depends on Israel what it chooses to do after that. Thank you so much for joining in on World DNA, sir. That was Mr. Charles Gupshin.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.